All right, I would like to call the Southland Community Schools special board meeting on May 18th at 6:15 to order. Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Tell.
Here.
Mr. Schwegler.
Here.
Mr. Clark.
Here.
I'm here, Mr. Dashner.
Here.
Mr. Kennedy.
Here.
And Ms. Hanshaw.
Here. Okay, that's everyone's here. 7-0, we have a quorum. Our first item up is public comments. We don't have any for this meeting, I don't think. Public comment we have for the regular meeting. So, with that, I get a motion to move to closed session under open meetings act.
So moved by Dashner.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Dashner, supported by Ms. Ertel to go into closed session. Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
Ms. Hanshaw.
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy.
Yes.
Mr. Dashner.
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Clark.
Yeah.
Mr. Schwegler.
Yes.
And Mr. Tell.
Yes.
All right, that is 7-0, motion passes. We are now going to leave this meeting and go into our closed session meeting. Open session. There are no additional public comments. So with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Dashner, supported by Ms. Ertel. Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler.
Yes.
Mr. Tell.
Yes.
Ms. Hanshaw.
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy.
Yes.
Mr. Dashner.
Yes.
And I vote yes.
All right, motion passes 7-0. We are adjourned. See you at the next meeting.
6:45, right?
Well, I'd like to call the Southland Community Schools special meeting on May 18th, 2020 at 6:45 p.m. to order. Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
Okay, Ms. Hanshaw.
I'm here.
Mr. Tell.
Here.
Mr. Kennedy.
I'm here.
Mr. Schwegler.
Here.
Mr. Dashner.
Here.
Mr. Clark.
Here.
And I'm here.
All right, there's a quorum. All 7 of us are here. First item up is public comments. We do not have any currently for this meeting. So next up is the 2020 Oakland Schools Board of Education biennial election. Mr. Heitch, do you want to explain what this is a little bit to our newer board members? Oh, we can't hear George. It looks like you can talk. Is anyone hearing George?
No.
Okay. No.
He's not muted, so I don't know.
Right. Try going out and coming back in. That happened to me on a different meeting where they couldn't hear me, but I was not muted, and I just had to log out and then log back in.
I guess we can start. I mean, he can come in and explain, but basically we have. Oh, there he is.
Okay, now that's better.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
There are 5 members on the Oakland Intermediate School Board. They are elected not by popular vote, but by vote of individual school districts within the Oakland Intermediate School District. There's 1 seat open this year and 1 candidate who is running for that seat, and that is George Ehlert from Southland, who has been a member of the Oakland Intermediate School Board for a long time. Your job today is to figure out who is going to go cast your ballot. And the Oakland Intermediate School is still trying to resolve in-person voting versus some kind of digital format, and they're trying to work that out before the election. Thank you.
So in the past, which is what they're also trying to do this time, is there's a 2-hour window. It's between 5:30 and 7:30 p.m. on Monday, June 1st. Someone from our district has to drive to Oakland schools to physically turn in the ballot with George Ellert's name on it. It's always kind of a pain for us because it's a hour-and-a-half drive, and that person usually misses our own board meeting or at least comes really late. So it would be great if we could somehow do it virtually, but if not, we have to plan on someone driving there. So with that, I don't think there's any discussion on who we're going to vote for because there's only one person. So it just comes down to who would like the honor of driving to Oakland schools on June 1st.
Could I ask Mr. Height, what is the ramifications if we don't vote?
Well, there would just be one less ballot cast in an uncontested election.
I think that's a very viable option.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
It's an awful mission you send somebody on.
Oh, wait, Judy has something to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to state that we do need an alternate too. So we have to have two names.
Okay, so we have to turn in 2 names either way. If it's virtual, then it shouldn't be an issue. And if we have to drive there in person, those 2 people, we can leave it up to them whether or not they can attend that meeting and get back for our meeting on time. Mr. Daschner? Oh, are you volunteering for the position? You're muted.
I'll have to throw my $5 in. Yeah, I'll volunteer for it. I mean, with Mr. Eller being from our community, I think is pointless as it is to vote. I think it would look bad if we didn't. So I'll take one for the team.
Okay, do we have someone that would like, oh, Mr. Abate, you're muted, so make sure you unmute. Oh, never mind.
Well, I was just using my clappy hand, so you can put me on the second.
I thought you were going to be the alternate.
I'll be the alternate. That's fine. You can put me in.
I think clapping hands is another way to say you want to be the alternate.
Yes, that's fair. That's fair. It really backfired on me.
Yes, it did.
That's
Okay.
funny.
Okay, with that, we as South Lyon Board, we are going to support Mr. George Ellert, and Mr. Daschner will be our delegate, with Mr. Abate being our alternate. All right, so then in our next meeting, we will actually vote. We have to pass an actual resolution that says this, but that'll happen at our 7 o'clock meeting. So anyone else have any discussion on this?
No, real quick, are you guys seeing a little bit of choppiness from some folks here as well? I'm trying to make sure it's not my internet, but I'm noticing a lot of freeze frames and choppiness.
I
always do, no matter the meeting, so it's not any different for me.
Every now and then, my Chromebook seems to lose connection, but then after 30 seconds, I just click it and it reconnects right again. I don't know why it's doing that. It says I have a weak signal, but it's a 5G signal from my router right in my basement. So my tablet that's right next to it appears completely fine. So I don't know.
You're not on the neighborhood Wi-Fi?
I have not been muting everybody.
Go.
So I don't know. I just drop out every now and then, but so far,
Just
right
thought
now,
I'd check before we get on our long talks.
Right. Okay.
well, my talk isn't going to be very long, so.
I
I think for you to be the longest.
have a page speech here, so you guys better all be ready.
Well, we'll sit back.
Okay, so if no further comments, there's no public comments for this meeting. So I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll support it.
Moved by Mr. Tell, supported by Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Tell.
Here, yes.
Mr. Swegler.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Daschner.
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy.
Yes.
And Ms. Hanshaw.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. We are adjourned. See you in 7 minutes.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Hello. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Southland Community Schools Board of Education meeting on Monday, May 18th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Dashner.
Here.
I'm here. Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Schwegler.
Here.
Mr. Tell.
Here.
Ms. Hanshaw.
Here.
And Mr. Kennedy.
I am here.
That is 7-0. We have a quorum. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
To the flag
of the United
of the
States,
United States of America.
and
To the republic
for which
for
it
which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
All right, our next item is public comments, and we actually do have 2 of them, and both people are planning on calling in. So we will start hopefully with Miss Julie Foley. Are you on the line, Julie? Miss Foley? Might have to unmute yourself. Miss Foley, are you on the line? Miss Foley? Okay, I don't see Miss Foley yet, so we'll give her some time, but we will go on to our second public comment, and that's Miss Lisa Welch. Miss Welch, are you on the line?
I am.
Perfect, thank you, you're up.
All right, awesome. Well, good evening. I'm Lisa Welch, a 7th grade math teacher at Centennial Middle School, a community member, and the proud president of the over 500 educators that are members of the South Lyon Education Association. Tonight is full of important decisions and conversations, the first one being the selection of a new superintendent. We recognize the efforts that have been made to involve all stakeholders from our community throughout the process, despite these challenging times. We know that you have received input from multiple members of the school community and have carefully considered everything you have received. We are particularly thankful that the voices of the SLA members were both valued and heard. We are confident that each of you will be making a decision tonight that is well informed and is one that you truly believe is best for our students, staff, and community at large. In addition, to the decision of a new superintendent, we know you will be presented with a revised preliminary budget for the 2021 school year. This budget includes a $500 cut to the per pupil funding allowance from the state and 0% student growth. You will be charged with making tough decisions when faced with this level of a budget shortfall. We recognize that you must adopt a budget by July 1st, even though these tough decisions will be based on several unknowns. This difficulty is only further magnified by the fact that everything is uncertain. What will school look like in the fall? How much money will we receive per pupil from the state? Will the federal government step in and provide financial assistance to the states for public education? I'm going to pause here. To those of you listening tonight, no matter what role you play in our school community, a parent, a school board member, an administrator, an educator, a bus driver, a custodian, building engineer, a secretary, a paraprofessional, a food service staff member, a community member. We all must demand better for our students from our elected officials. Despite these uncertainties, schools should not endure budget cuts while businesses receive bailouts. So many of the decisions you will consider will be in conflict with one another. For example, cutting teachers will increase class size in a time where social distancing will likely be necessary. Cutting educators that provide support services to our most at-risk students will increase these educators' already high caseloads in a time when academic and social support will be needed the most. We recognize that making adjustments to a budget of this size is not easy. Stacy Witt and her staff have already made more than one adjustment to the original preliminary budget and will likely need to make more as some of these uncertainties become more certain. We also know that this initial list of reductions was not easy for our administrators at the building level and at the central office level to identify. This list doesn't just include reductions to programs or things, it includes reductions of real people. When the list of suggested reductions is presented this evening, it is our hope that each will be explained in detail so that our SLEA members and the community have a clear understanding of each reduction being proposed. If descriptions are left vague, this will only lead to more questions, uncertainty, and anxiety. And finally, as you consider reductions, we ask that you start with the expenses that are furthest from the classroom and work from the outside in. We understand that funding cuts of this magnitude will likely impact the classroom, but every effort must be made to make that impact as minimal as possible. Educators in South Lyon, across the county, across our state, and across our nation are heroes. Overnight, we transitioned from in-person instruction to distant learning. These heroes have worked together to make what seemed impossible possible. They have gone to great lengths to keep our students' emotional and academic needs a priority. Heroes are not forgotten. Heroes are not expendable. So thank you again for conducting a transparent and inclusive superintendent search. We are confident that as you consider budget reductions for the 2021 school year, you will maintain that same level of transparency and will seek and value the input of all stakeholders.
Sorry. Thank you, Ms. Welch. Ms. Julie Foley, have you joined the meeting? You might have to unmute yourself.
Yep.
Perfect.
Hi. Hello.
Hello.
I've looked through the entire budget and all of the proposed cuts, and I'm extremely curious. I understand there has to be personnel cuts, and yes, to the previous speaker's point, these are going to be real people that we are affecting. But through the bond proposal and then also through the preliminary budget, if in-person teaching does return in the fall, according to the regular school calendar, I am concerned about, it seems like a disproportional cut to the custodial maintenance, and then also to their equipment and to their personnel, as well as it was line item 73 under maintenance compensation. There was a very large reduction, over $100,000 in that area alone. Same thing with the custodial operations. I'm just concerned that if and when our children and the faculty return to the building, that there may not be enough cleaning supplies to actually safely return. I know that there are plans in place and there are committees set up, and we're still waiting on guidance from local and state government, but that's a very large concern of mine. I would rather see something else temporarily set aside instead of knowing that a proper cleaner and enough people to clean all of the facilities that are being utilized. Because if we look back at the state implementations of safety guidelines, closing schools was done overnight. There was from the 11 p.m. announcement with the executive order, and then Friday, March 13th, it was minutes for everyone, all of the staff, to scramble to figure this out. And I know that wasn't an easy thing, but it was the very first thing that state precautions took. And I know getting all of the parents back to work, we're going to need the school buildings open. And I think this is going to be one of the very last things that the state will reopen. I believe it's in step 5 or step 6 of the governor's plan. But it is extremely alarming to see significant cuts, disproportional percentage cuts to maintenance and custodial staff versus other possible cuts that could be made.
All right, thank you. All right, I don't have any other board meeting or public comments at this time. If anyone would like to speak at our second opportunity, at the end of the meeting, we do have another public comments. With that, we can move to item number 4, approval of agenda. Would anyone like to make a motion for the approval of agenda?
I move to approve the May 18th agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
Moved by Mr. Ertel, supported by Mr. Kennedy. Any questions, comments, or changes to the agenda? If not, Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
Okay, Ms. Hanshaw,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Dashner.
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler,
Yes.
and Mrs. Ertel.
Yes.
All right, motion passes 7-0. Item number 5, approval of minutes. Is there a
I
motion?
will move to approve the May 4th regular meeting and the May 5th special meeting minutes.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Kennedy, supported by Mr. Schwegler. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Okay, Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
Okay, I vote yes. Mrs. Ertel,
Yes.
Ms. Hanshaw,
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
and Mr. Dashner.
Yes.
All right, motion passes 7-0. Item number 6, approval of bills.
I'll move to approve the April 2020 prepaids, the April 2020 wires and ACH transactions, and the April 2020 revenue report.
Support by Clark.
Moved by Mr. Dashner, supported by Mr. Clark. Any questions or comments? I just want to state that I do appreciate the revenue report, a fairly new report, and I appreciate seeing that. So thank you, Ms. Witt. All right, Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Ms. Hanshaw,
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler,
Yes.
Mr. Ertel.
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Dashner,
Yes.
and Mr. Clark.
Yes.
All right, motion passes 7-0. Up next is item number 7, our discussion and final selection of superintendent. I'd like to ask all of the non-board members if they could turn off their cameras, just so that it's easier for our discussion at this point. I would appreciate it. And with that, Mr. Saleri.
Good evening, everyone. Congratulations on reaching the culmination of a very long and thorough process. I think there's merit to taking just a brief time to review the steps that you've taken, just for your own benefit and for those listening in. And this began, as you recall, way back in December when you enlisted the services of MLI to assist you with this process. And we first met in January for our planning meeting to establish the timeline and go over all the details of the search. We met with stakeholder groups in January to collect input on the stakeholder candidate profile. And as you recall too, we also did then an online survey where we collected additional input from stakeholders, and we used that to create that candidate profile and identify points of pride of the district and create that job posting that went out in February. And then through February and March, we accepted applications for the position. Once that period closed, when we were on the verge of coming together to select applicants, that was when we unfortunately experienced the school shutdown. So after a bit of a break, we decided to resume the search virtually. And once we did, then we got back together again to screen all of the applicants in April, and we selected 6. You selected 6 candidates to interview. Those initial interviews were conducted the week of April 27th, after which time you came back together and selected 2 finalists to advance. That was on April 30th. Came back together again on May 5th when you held a second round interview with each of those 2 finalists. We had virtual question and answer sessions then following those interviews with stakeholders. That was on May 6th and 7th. And then virtual site visits were conducted on May 13th and 14th. So a lot of steps in the process completed successfully. And so now, as you've deliberated the big decision, you've had the opportunity to review the finalist applications, their resumes, and their cover letters that I presented to you. You've had additional information that the candidates themselves had given you as well, that you've had a chance to review. You've had the chance to look at your interview notes from both the first and second round interviews, the stakeholder feedback that you collected from the first round interviews, second round interviews, and then also the stakeholder question and answer sessions. And then the virtual site visits, along with the participant overview that was provided to the board. So, and then in addition, the reference summaries that I provided to you. So a lot of data to consider, and you've had time to review that, which I know you've done very carefully and thoughtfully. So your stakeholders at this point can be assured that you've done your due diligence. You've completed a very strategic, thorough, and thoughtful process. As someone stated earlier, it's been very inclusive and transparent. So congratulations on that. And you really are very well prepared at this point to make this very critical decision for your district. So at this time, it's really up to you to decide which of 2 very highly qualified finalists you wish to select as your next superintendent. And in terms of the process, as we've done previously, we'll simply go around, give each member of the board the opportunity to express who it is at this point that you support for that role in your district. And we're going to ask you to speak to why that is as well. And then once all 7 members of the board have had a chance to weigh in that way, it will be apparent who the majority of the board supports. And then we'll simply need a motion, a second. You can have additional discussion if you wish, and then you would simply take a vote. So having said that, President Hanshaw.
All right, with that, Mr. Dashner, would you like to go first?
Sure. I'd like to start off by saying thank you to Mr. Silveri for all the help he's given us. I think he's done well guiding us through this process. I know I said it earlier, but it's a easy process with a tough decision at the end, and that's where we are. And at risk of making this sound like a Grammy acceptance speech, I also wanted to thank Chester and Jeff again for all they've done helping us get these things done virtually. We did hear compliments from the other schools where we did site visits of how seamless we were able to make it all. And I also want to thank Dan, Jenny, and Eric for doing the site visits. I know that was a pretty big chunk of their time. I thought they asked some great questions that really helped me out in my decision tonight. I think Mr. Silveri went through the process very good. You know, we had 157 comments that came from the community. I've read every one at least twice, some of them 3 times as I was going through things yesterday and watching the 7 hours of video from the site visits, going through my notes. I think each and every one of us spent a lot of time considering this over the past several days. With that, I am going to recommend Mr. Archibald be selected. For me, it came down to differentiators that I heard repeatedly during the site visits. He has large district experience, a little bit bigger than ours, that I think that will help with us. Stability was a key theme with him. Relationships was something I heard over and over and over again. Sense of confidence, listens carefully, takes on issues, builds leadership capabilities in others, which I think is important. Big picture thinker, thinks through issues but doesn't drag them out. A couple of the comments we heard from the site visits is you'd be lucky to have him, and I am thrilled and devastated to recommend him. With all of that said, there was several moments in his site visits that I could feel the emotion, and from somebody that was watching them on a video, that was very telling to me that somebody or several people liked him that much that I could feel that sense of warmth coming through a screen on a video I watched. In the end, we have two very qualified comments. I think either of them could run the district in a good fashion for us. But in the end, I've learned that it comes down to gut, and Steve just feels like the right person for us.
All right, thank you. Mr. Abate?
Thank you, Ms. Hand. So I want to also thank Mr. Silveri, and I will say for any districts out there that need to go through this process, I don't think it gets much better than MLI and Mr. Silveri in particular. It is quite a process, and you really need somebody good that gets you through, and he got us there. I appreciate that. I also want to echo what Mr. Dashner said about our colleagues. I think this is a moment I think I've never enjoyed or been more proud to be part of this group, just watching everybody to put the effort and the time in to make the decision, especially our three folks, Mr. Tell, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Swegler. Those are long days on those site visits, and it's the first time I think, Mr. Silveri, it's ever been done that we've done it remotely that way, and you guys did a phenomenal job. And those were huge moments. A lot of information came out of that, so thank you so much for that. I want to say in regard to both of our candidates, they're both excellent. We were in a situation, a very good situation, where I don't think we can make a bad decision. And I will say, whoever gains a majority support tonight, I'm going to very happily vote yes on their motion and welcome them openly, and do everything I can to help them be successful, because they're great people. But we can only have one. And for myself, I'm going to concur with Mr. Dashner. My vote for our next superintendent will be Mr. Archibald. I did make that decision based on several items. First, the climate and culture piece is really important to me. And like any district with strong leadership, nobody joins Superintendent Oquist's cabinet unless they can stand on their own 2 feet and have proven they can lead. Steve's certainly somebody who can do that, but that group very much lives by the notion that if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And Steve, I think, really embodies that. He's somebody who can stand on his own 2 feet, but knows the value of bringing everybody with him and chooses to go together. And I think that's a sentiment that's really resonated with a lot of stakeholders in our community, because we've seen that come out, especially from the teacher group and the administrator group and so on. And we saw that echoed in the site visits. And that's really important to me. I think it's an attitude that will serve us well. Regarding some of our needs, the budgeting and the finance piece, thought a lot about this. I didn't want to get too lost in that. It's a huge issue, but we're not hiring necessarily a CFO. We have a really good one and a good finance team that's already working to do the things that we need to do to get us through this crisis that's coming. So for me, I was hoping that a superintendent could come in and supplement those skills. I think both of these candidates can certainly do that. For Steve, it was about the comparative experience. He has led in a district where the enrollment's been declining for years. And yet as secondary director, was the point person for preserving a really wide range of student programs, especially at the secondary level, wider group than really we've been traditionally able to offer here, and was a significant player in the decisions that helped reserve a 20% fund balance there for a rainy day just like this. And I think that's significant. I thought about the bond piece as well. I think it's really important when you have somebody who can not only help us through the passage, but be a leader in the implementation of the projects when we're done. We passed in Livonia several years ago a bond that was twice the size of what we're asking from the community now. Steve led so many committees in planning the projects and spending the funds for that the joke around the district became, if you need a committee chair, just call Steve. He's on all of them anyway. And that was really the trust that the district had in him. And then the last piece, and the piece that was really significant for me, is the long-term outlook of the district. We're not always going to grow the way we have, and we've seen that slow down now. It may be many years in the road, but eventually the district will sort of max out and plateau and ultimately contract, the natural way of things. Steve's been a leader in a district that has seen both sides of that hill. He was a principal when we were at our peak enrollment. He's been a central office administrator through all the years that we have declined. So he's seen both sides of that. I think it's really important to have somebody who can help us make decisions for the future that won't put us in impossible situations down the road where we have to go to the community and say that we have to reverse a lot of things that we've done. I think that's a big deal. So I think his experience, the size of the district, the breadth and of his experience in general are what did it for me. So that is, those are my reasoning. And thank you so much for listening.
All right, Mr. Swegler.
I appreciate that Craig said, we don't want this to sound like an acceptance speech, but there really are people to thank. Again, to John, Chester, Jeff, thank you very much for making this go as well as we could have expected. to the rest of you on the board, I really commend everybody for a high level of professionalism, everyone for thinking on their own 2 feet. It's been a really enjoyable experience with you guys. And for all of those that took the time to take my phone calls personally as I tried to ask about both candidates, and to those in the community who took a lot of time to watch this whole process unfold. As Craig said, I've read every single comment multiple times that was posted. And with all of that information, and especially a lot of the stuff we saw on the site visit, I mean, these are 2 great candidates. They really are. It's amazing to me how many qualities that we were looking for. I took the characteristics we were looking for in our original posting, and I literally marked the strengths of each candidate across each one of those, and it's really close. And then there's just a couple categories to me that I felt one candidate had a bigger advantage for what I felt would help lead our district forward. And for those reasons, I'm going to choose Dr. Outlaw. I know that there were some concerns. I did a lot of digging to understand more background about concerns people had about, the fact that he's only been there for 6 years. I mean, he's spent 11 years as a principal in the Grosse Pointe schools to take on the challenge of turning around a struggling district. And what he's accomplished in 5-6 short years is beyond amazing. With just like kind of Livonia, though. I mean, not to downplay anything that's been done in Livonia, but to take a district with a struggling fund balance, to improve the offerings, which I'll get to in a second, for that district, while also increasing the fund balance, was pretty impressive. I was extremely impressed with the fact that when the community helped create the vision that they wanted for that district, part of that vision was to bring back some of those CTE type classes, and he got right on it. That was one of his first things. He finally got the right person in place to start a woodworking class last year, where the project was to build a small house, and he's got a welding class starting this year. And not just him, the district, him and his team, they've got a welding class coming. I think that that's something that Southland could benefit tremendously from, to have somebody who has that vision to create these programs, even in the face of difficult financial times. When you talk about emotion, I remember specifically in the site visits, we asked the central administration team, very, very simple question: would you follow him? If he were chosen, would you follow him? Same thing with the teachers. And it was an overwhelming yes. Same thing with Mr. Archibald, though. I mean, he had a lot of support from his group, but I could really feel that emotion from that team. I mean, one of their curriculum director had mentioned how he literally moved from Florida just to go work with Dr. Archibald, Dr. Outlaw, knowing that he may not be there very long. He still made the move to go work with him. A lot of great collaboration with his team. I tried not to focus so much on the finance either, because I do strongly believe in Stacy Witt's ability. I just think that's icing on the cake, the fact that he's got an incredibly strong finance background to go with it. But for those reasons, I am going to put my vote with Dr. Outlaw.
Ms. Rattell?
Yes, thank you. Again, I also want to reiterate the thank yous to the team that has helped with this decision. Mr. Silveri, I think you have the most calming voice and demeanor to help with this decision. I thought that was just made everything so much easier and very thoughtful. Any questions that we had were wonderfully answered and helped guide us through this process. Having sat through all the interviews, looking at all of the recommendations, the application, their resumes, the public comments on the spreadsheet. Again, I read through those multiple times. Emails and phone calls that I've had with people, community people, teachers, admin. I think we have 2 really great candidates, and it was a difficult decision. I am going to recommend Mr. Archibald. In going through all of the paperwork, recommendations, comments, the site visits were incredibly helpful. And I'm not going to be anywhere close as eloquent as the others, but I just felt a sense of community and thoughtfulness and trust in Mr. Archibald and the things that he has done in the Livonia district. I also appreciated the fact that it's a slightly larger district than us. They've gone through that growth plateau decline. And again, I think that's kind of what our district will be going through here. We're in our growth at some point. We'll have our plateau and a bit of a decline. Again, I was trying not to focus on the financial as heavily where it's important. I think we've got a couple of years of difficult times, but I didn't want that to be the only item, which I do think Mr. Archibald is strong in. And again, we have very capable hands with Stacy Witt. So yeah, so my choice is Mr. Archibald, and I'll hand it on to the next person. Thank you.
All right, I will go next. I'm not going to reiterate the thank yous, but thank you to all of those same people. I also agree with everyone. I think either one of these candidates are well qualified and would do a wonderful job here or anywhere. And I appreciate all the feedback and the comments and all the hard work of everyone and the opinions and everything. It was very helpful. I kind of jotted down some notes. I also chose Mr. Archibald, and some of the notes that I wrote down were, I liked when he stated that standardized testing has unfairly put us in a box and shifted our thinking and focus on testing and not learning for the sake of learning. And he said that we need to control that narrative and tell our own story. I thought that was something that I really appreciated. He doesn't have a finance background, but he was the principal of a high school that has 2,200 students in it, and handled that building for years. And so I feel that gives him at least a solid understanding of finance. I liked when he said that he will lead or follow as necessary given the current situation and who he's with. I like that he said he wants to deliver more than we expected and that we'll be a unified school district. And I think going forward with everything that's going on, we need a leader that will unify us as a district, that will bring out the best in our administrators and our teachers and all of our staff. And I think that he has the ability to do that. And I know that he has the desire and want to do that. A community member stated that they really believed that he was in for the long haul. And like it was talked about earlier, the fact that we had Dr. Pearson for 20 years and Ms. Baker for 5 years, it's a benefit to our community when we have someone that's willing to stick around and stay. And I think he is interested in doing that. And I think he will stay for a long time. I also liked, we had some teachers that stated that he wants to have a natural presence in the buildings and that he actually keeps a log of when he does go into buildings to make sure that he's visiting all of them. And I think that will help him get to know our district as quick as possible. And I think with that, that's my vote. Mr. Kennedy, I think you said you wanted to go next.
Sure. When we started this process, I think it's something that us as a group, perhaps with the exception of Randy, but I think we've never done this in this fashion before. And I agree with what Jenny said. If we didn't have John's dulcet tones and calm demeanor, we probably would have been a little more anxious. So I very much appreciate him talking us down from the cliff, so to speak, when things got we got a little anxious. I cannot disagree with a single word that anybody has said so far about either of our candidates. When you look at our candidate profile that we first submitted, I thought, who checks all those boxes? And both candidates overwhelmingly pretty much checked all of those boxes quite well. They're both very well credentialed, highly experienced, very well recommended by their colleagues. When I looked at and read again several times the over 150 comments, entries, I should say, some were about both candidates, and some of those entries had several topics in there. So well over 200 individual data points to look at. The emails, input from administration and our own parents and community that submitted information. For me, most telling, I think, was the discussions that Jenny, Dan, and I had from our virtual site visits, something that's never been done before. The passion that the stakeholders from both other districts gave to us, I think, were unprecedented. Teachers, principals, superintendents, board of education trustees, central office personnel, support staff, teachers, union leadership. There wasn't anything negative that could be construed as negative from either of those. So it was, I think, for me, a pretty tough decision coming out of that. For me, what it comes down to, who can build our vision forward, not just work off of our strategic plan, but who has some experience and ideas going forward. Curriculum, from a curriculum standpoint and fiscally, who can continue to deepen our climate and our culture in the direction that we're going, expand on the great things that we're already doing, and take us from just being a really good district, because I think that's where we are, to a fabulous, outstanding, exceptional place to work in and learn in. I thought, who can work closest, most effectively with our staff, our administration, our students, parents, and community in creating that culture. Some of the things that came out were, who will be the person to lead and develop trust with integrity and confidence with our administrators, teachers, and the rest of our community. The person for me that does that is also Steve Archibald. And that's who I will throw my support to. I shouldn't say it that way. I would support either of those two candidates. That's how fabulous they were. Who do I think can push us into that take that next step up the ladder? I think Mr. Archibald can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. And Mr. Clark.
Yes, good evening. Thank you. I first want to thank Mr. Silveri. He's placed us in a no-lose situation this evening. This has been a fantastic journey. I had high anxiety over trying to do this virtually. I think we've ended up with more information and more data to work with than we probably would have by any means in an actual regular setting. So I find that rather interesting. We missed the personal contact and the ability to read the body language and have conversation. But on the other hand, I think we've gained a lot more information than we would have the other way. Unlike Mr. Swagler at the last meeting, obviously there's no pressure on me. So I appreciate what he went through with that. That was a very tough decision. I applaud you for your courage in that effort. Both of these candidates are excellent. There's no doubt about it. I'm going to keep it really short because there's obviously a majority here. My inclination would have been to go with Dr. Outlaw, simply because of the things that we were looking for, which was a dynamic, visionary, and an inspirational leader. And I felt that he met those criteria. His strength on the financial side, which is obviously of utmost concern to all of us, probably was one of the bigger factors that tipped the scales in my mind, along with his success in the CTE programs that he's achieved in Brandon. I thought those were amazing, and only hope that someday we can do that in Southland. So I would have chosen Dr. Outlaw. There is a majority already, but I want to thank everybody who's been very professional through this whole process. We've come to a conclusion, and it's been a long journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. With that, would someone like to make a motion?
I will, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Again, in light of the professionalism of this board and how much it's been, how great it's been, I'm certainly more than willing to support the board in their choice. So I would like to make a motion to go into contract deliberations and offer the job of superintendent to Mr. Stephen Archibald.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Schwegler, supported by Ms. Ertel. Any further questions or comments?
Do we need to specifically give you authority to negotiate this on our behalf, Carrie?
Probably. Yeah, Dan, do you want to read the actual verbiage?
I was going to say actual verbiage wasn't there. Hold on one second.
Thanks, Craig.
And go back. Sorry, there's a few emails I have on the subject.
Just a couple. We're not saying you send too many emails, Mr. Silveri. They were just the right amount of emails.
All right. Let me restate my motion. I move to employ Stephen Archibald as superintendent of Southland Community Schools pending board approval of a contractual agreement and authorize the president of the board to initiate negotiations with Stephen Archibald regarding the contractual agreement governing his employment.
Support.
All right, moved by Mr. Schwegler and supported by Ms. Ertel. Any further questions or comments? All right, at this time, Mr. Abate, will you please call the roll?
Okay, I vote yes. Mr. Dashna,
Yes.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler,
Yes.
Mr. Tell,
Yes.
and Ms. Hanshaw.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. And with that, we are going to call Mr. Archibald and let him know about our verdict. And Mr. Silveri will contact Dr. Outlaw for us. So give me a second. Mr. Archibald, this is Carrie Hanshaw of the Southland Community Schools Board of Education. Yes, our meeting is still in progress. May I put you on speakerphone so that the rest of the board and those watching and listening from home can hear? All right. Okay, hopefully everyone can hear this. I have the pleasure of informing you that our Board of Education just voted to appoint you as the new superintendent of Southland Community Schools. Congratulations. We are very excited to have you as our new leader.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I as much as I've had to speak through this process, I'm absolutely speechless at this opportunity, really. I am grateful for the board support, the community support. I know you had a very tough decision to make, and I assure you that I will work tirelessly every single day to demonstrate to you, to this board, and to the community that you made an excellent decision. And I haven't had questions up till now, but now my questions are what's next, and let's get to work. So thank you.
Excellent. The next step is for us to agree upon your employment contract. I will be sending a draft contract for you to review along with my contact information. Do you have any additional contact questions for me at this time?
I do not, but thank you.
All right. Congratulations again on your appointment as the new superintendent of the Southland Community Schools. The board is confident that you are the right person to help lead us into a bright and prosperous future, and we look forward to working with you very soon.
Likewise. Thank you all very much.
All right. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
All right. Thank you very much. We will move on to our next item, which is item number 8, the 2020 Oakland Schools biennial election resolution. Sorry. George, do you want to talk about that?
I would love to.
Thank you.
The Oakland Intermediate School District has a school board that is comprised of 5 members. Those 5 members are elected by the local school district board of education within the Oakland Intermediate School District. This is your opportunity to cast a vote in this year's election. George Ellert is a current member of the Oakland Intermediate School District Board of Education, also a Southland resident, and he is running uncontested for a seat on the Oakland Intermediate School District Board of Education.
All right, so we had a prior meeting at 6:45 today to begin this process. So can I get a motion to approve the resolution as presented?
I'll move to approve it as presented.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Dashner, supported by Ms. Ertel. Questions or comments? Just so everyone knows, we have Mr. Dashner as our delegate, and Mr. Abate has offered to be our alternate. And the two of them, one of them will place our vote for Mr. Ellert in the election on June 1st. And we're still waiting to find out exactly how that election will be run. But we will keep you posted. All right, any other questions or comments regarding the election? Okay, Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
Okay, Ms. Henshaw,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Dashner.
Yes.
I vote yes, Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler,
Yes.
and Mr. Tell.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 7-0. Item number 9 is a proposed new high school course for marketing.
Yes, a new business elective course, marketing, was proposed at the May 4th meeting and no changes were requested. And we are recommending that you approve the proposed marketing course for 11th and 12th grade students beginning in the 2021 school year.
I will move to approve the marketing course for the high school.
We have support.
I'll second that.
Moved by Mr. Kennedy, supported by Mr. Abate. Any questions or comments regarding the marketing class course? Okay, Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Tell,
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler,
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
I vote yes, Mr. Dashner,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
and Ms. Henshaw.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Item number 10, the textbook purchase for the marketing class.
As part of the implementation for the new marketing course, the teachers have selected a textbook for purchase. The MOD marketing textbook purchase was brought for information to the May 4th meeting and no changes were requested. And we are recommending that the textbook purchase from Stu Kent be approved for the marketing course beginning in 2021 for a total 5-year cost of $9,486.
Do we have a motion?
I will also move to purchase the textbooks for the said marketing course.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Kennedy, supported by Mr. Tell. Any questions or comments on the textbook purchase? Okay, Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Dashner,
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Tell,
Yes.
Ms. Henshaw,
Yes.
and I vote yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Item number 11 is the shift of the swim unit from Foundations of Health and Fitness course to Healthy Life Habits course.
Yes, our high school students participate in a 3-week swim unit of study in their PE courses. And currently that unit falls within the fall semester Foundations of Health and Fitness course. PE staff from both schools are seeking approval to shift the unit to the spring semester Healthy Life Habits course instead. This change was brought to the May 4th meeting for information and no concerns were shared. and we are recommending that you approve the shift of the swim unit from Foundations of Health and Fitness to Healthy Life Habits, effective beginning with the 2021 school year.
We have motion?
So moved.
I'll support.
Moved by Mr. Tell, supported by Mr. Dashner. Any questions or comments regarding moving of the swim unit? Okay, Mr. Buckley, please call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Kennedy.
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Schwegler.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Ms. Fanshawe.
Yes.
Mr. Dashner.
Yes.
And Mr. Tell.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Item number 12, storm drain projects.
Yes. Hi. Bids were received on May 6th for storm drain projects at Salem Elementary and South Lyon High School. The FPC committee did review these projects last month. 6 bids were received for the projects. The recommendation of administration is to award the project to the low bidder, Nagel Paving, at a total bid price of $288,390 for both projects.
We have a motion.
I'll move to award the storm drain projects as requested.
Support.
I will support. There you go.
Moved by Mr. Dashner, supported by Mr. Tell. Any questions or comments on the storm drain project?
One comment I'd like to make, and if I missed it, I'm sorry, but we did find out that these can be done with leftover 2015 bond funds. So it will not be impacting the bottom lines, which is very good right now, but they are also very critical projects to get done too. I know Salem had some failures, so it wasn't something that could be put off.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Bate, please call the roll.
All right, Ms. Fanshawe.
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy.
Yes.
Mr. Dashner.
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler.
Yes.
And Mr. Tell.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. With that, is everyone okay taking a 10-minute break right here? Is everyone? Okay, so it's 7:52, so we'll meet back at 8:05.
Okay.
Thank you. Information and inquiry. Item number 13. Up first is the Newsela purchase.
Newsela.
Newsela. I knew I was gonna say
Newsela. Newsela is an online platform that provides text resources for students. Content is available in students from grades 3 through 12 in both ELA and social studies. Texts are organized into subject areas and topics and are aligned to standards. Additionally, many reading pieces are available both at a variety of reading levels and in Spanish, meaning teachers can very easily differentiate assignments for students. Teachers can utilize the existing content quizzes and writing prompts, or they can create their own. Newsela will be beneficial as it allows our students greater opportunity to transfer their literacy skills into an online setting. In addition, this purchase is beneficial for 2 key purposes for next school year. It can serve as a content resource for texts that students can access in both ELA and social studies, should instruction need to shift online or partially online for next school year. The purchase will also allow staff to provide targeted interventions specific to a student's reading level, regardless of whether the instruction will occur in person or online. The total cost for the program will be $77,980 for accounts for all students in the district for grades 3 through 12 for the 2021 school year. We do anticipate being able to utilize the elementary and secondary school emergency relief, or ESSER funds, for the total cost of the purchase. This purchase will be brought back to the June 1st meeting for approval.
Any questions or comments? Nope. Nope, no comments. Okay, then we can move on to the next item is NWEA MAP accelerator purchase. Mr. Bell.
Yes, we are also looking to utilize the ESSER funds to cover a purchase from the Northwest Evaluation Association's newest math product, which is MAP Accelerator. MAP Accelerator is a partnership between NWEA and Khan Academy. This online platform is designed for use of students in grades 3 through 8, and it provides differentiated mathematics content by integrating class rosters, student scores in the mathematics portion of the NWEA Map Growth Assessment, and resources in Khan Academy. Students can access online lessons, instructional videos, and practice problems designed to address their specific learning needs. The program addresses the need to differentiate learning for individual students, regardless of whether the learning will occur in person or remotely. The total cost for this program, which will be utilized for students in grades 3 through 8, will be $20,605. And again, we do anticipate covering the cost of the program with ESSER funds, and the purchase will be brought back to the June 1st board meeting for approval.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on the NWEA purchase? Okay, with that, item C, the 2020 and the 2021 preliminary budget. Ms. Witt.
Good evening. I am going to present my screen and can everybody see the 2021 preliminary budget slides? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I forget when you present that you can't see us anymore.
Yeah.
So we were all giving you a thumbs up, but you couldn't see it. So
No, I
sorry.
couldn't. That's okay. So this is a 2021 preliminary budget presentation. This presentation again is broke up into the 4 sections the last presentation was in. The first section will be the state of the state. The second section will be the 2021 preliminary budget. The third section will be what about Southland Community Schools, and the fourth section will be financial forecasts. First, we look at the state of the state. Again, we don't have concrete numbers from the House and the Senate, and the governor's numbers that I have in this presentation were the numbers from that she put out in January, February, prior to the COVID-19 epidemic. She was suggesting a 225 per pupil increase, which would have been a 2.77% increase, which would have increased our per pupil foundation by $1,972,800. The governor also had $307,427 of at-risk special ed CT increases for Southland Community Schools, for a total increase of $2,280,227,000. Our preliminary budget tonight was built on a $500 per pupil foundation reduction based on the latest information that's coming out from the state. That would bring our 2021 per pupil foundation to $7,611, $500 reduction from our current 1920 per pupil allocation of $8,111. This would be a 6.16% reduction in per pupil funding from the 1920 amounts. Total decrease of per pupil foundation would amount in $4,484,000, and we built in no increases for at-risk special ed CTE at $0. So we have a total reduction in per pupil foundation of $4,484,000. This came straight from the May Census Revenue Estimating Conference that was held on Friday, May 13th. It's an actual, it's the graph showing the school aid fund net growth, where we actually ended last year in 18-19 of a 1.9% growth. They are estimating this year in 19-20 anywhere from a 7% decline to a 6% decline, the yellow being the House fiscal agent, the green bar being the Senate fiscal agent, and the blue bar being administration or treasury or governor. In 2021, they're projecting an increase anywhere from 4.6% to 4.3% in the school aid fund net growth, and in 2022, anywhere from 6.3% to 4.7%. The school aid fund net revenue estimates, again, the yellow bars are the House fiscal agent, the green bars are the Senate fiscal agent, and the blue bar is administration. For 18-19 actual net revenue estimate or net revenues for 18-19 were actually $13.55 billion. In this current year, 1920, from the May Census Revenue Estimating Conference, they are looking at our actual revenue estimates in the school aid fund being anywhere from $12.6 billion to $12.75 billion. 2021, anywhere from $13.1 billion to $13.3 billion, and 2022, $13.9 billion. This is the actual this year's current changes since the January Census Revenue Estimating Conference. They're looking at the left 3 bars are the general fund appropriation at the state level. The 3 bars on the right are the school aid fund at the state revenue or state level, which is projecting 1.3 basically 1.3 billion or $1.3 billion less in revenues since the January estimating conference. That's how much they're reducing since January. That last chart here was for this current fiscal year. This is for 2021, next year's budget. The school aid fund are the right 3 bars, projecting about a $1.2 billion loss in revenues since the January Census Revenue Estimating Conference. In 2022, they're projecting about $700,000 short of the school aid fund in revenues from the January estimates. School aid fund for Michigan's major taxes were estimated to have a $1.1 billion shortfall for the 1920 fiscal year at the May 2020 Census Revenue Estimating Conference, resulting in an estimated $650 to $700 per pupil funding cut in this current 1920 fiscal year. Lower than projected sales tax collections in conjunction with the decline in casino revenue accounted for much of the discrepancies between actual collections and the monthly targeted estimates. Year-to-date school aid fund revenue for fiscal 1920 are $1.2 billion below the January census revenue projections. Lower than expected sales tax collections are the primary reason, although casino tax revenues and state educational tax collections are also below the year-to-date targeted estimates. This is the same chart. They have not talked about reducing retirement or anything else at state level for districts. So our underfunded liabilities are scheduled to be paid off in the year 2038. The top 2 amounts, the teal and the light green, are actually reimbursements we get through state aid and we turn around and pay back to the state. The dark blue base funding amount is strictly the district's responsibility to pay. So the 2021 preliminary budget, the Finance Committee met on May 4th and on May 11th, and we reviewed the 2021 preliminary budget assumptions. We decided to build a budget on a $500 per pupil reduction for 2021 budget, and we discussed possible cuts for 1920 due to COVID-19 pandemic, but at those dates we didn't learn the severity until Friday and today about what those actual cuts could mean in 1920. As we also talked about budgeting conservatively and amending the fund balance policy for 2021. The 2021 preliminary budget general fund overview has a total revenues of $86,899,455, total expenditures of $88,576,655 for a net operating loss of $1,677,200. After the transfer to other funds of $846,000, there's a total district decrease in fund balance of $2,523,200 in this budget. Taking a look at revenues, the state aid portion and the portions that come from the state categoricals makes up 90% of our revenues. ISD flow-through funds make up 5% of our revenues. Federal grants make up 3% of our revenues, and local and other sources are about 2% of district revenues. The 1920 overall per pupil allocation was $8,111. We are budgeting a $500 decrease in the per pupil foundation, which brings the 2021 per pupil allocation foundation to $7,611 in this budget. We are we are budgeting for a 0% increase using the 2019 fall student count of 8,773 as our 2020 estimated fall student count with 8,773 students. Using 8,773 students for our fall count and our spring audited student count of 8,724 students, we get a weighted average student count of 8,768. That is how the state calculates your weighted student count average. Is 90% of your fall count, 10% of your spring count. The total, we multiply our weighted student count average by our per pupil foundation allowance of $7,611, and we get a total foundation revenues of $66,733,248. Of that total foundation revenues, we levy 18 mills from our local taxpayers, which amounts in $9,172,067. That actually the state reduces off of their payments that they make to us. They expect us to collect that locally. So the state portion that we will receive directly from the state is in the amount of $57,561,181. Of that 18 mil operating that we levy from our local taxpayers, we do budget for delinquencies at 0.5%, which amounts to $50,750. Making our amount of our local taxes collected in 2021 to $9,121,317. 1920 current allocation of sections 147A1, A2, C1, and E are in the amount of $7,342,966. The estimated increase from ORS was given to us by ORS in the amount of $17,623, bringing our total 2021 estimated allocation of section 147A, A and C and E to $7,360,589. This is for the UAAL retirement and that retirement offset I was talking about earlier that you get for your state aid payment that you have to return and pay back to the state. While Proposal A was never intended to fund all schools equally, the question still must be asked, are Southland students worth millions of dollars less than an average district in the state? This chart shows the current 1920 per pupil base foundation for several districts in our area, showing Southfield Community Schools gets a base foundation allowance from the state of $11,331. If we took the difference between what we get at the minimum base foundation of $8,111 times our student count, they get $28,249,060 more per student, or they would have gotten more in their budget with the same student count as we did with that increased base foundation. The county average is $8,935 per pupil, and the state average is $8,403 per pupil. Southland receives $8,111 per pupil. This chart shows the rankings from 1819 and the total revenues, including all revenues, local revenues, federal revenues, and how much they receive per student. As a whole, showing Pontiac receiving $18,405 per pupil and ranked 34th in the state as having the most revenues per pupil. South Lyon is ranked 559th in the state, and we receive $10,099 per pupil in all funding. We'll start to discuss the expenditures now. The 2021 preliminary budget general fund expenditures are categorized with, are made up of 51% are salaries, 36% of the expenditures are benefits, 6% of the expenditures are purchase services, 4% are supplies and materials, 3% are other, and we do have capital outlay budgeted in our general fund budget, but it was very low and came out to a 0% on the graph here. In this 2021 preliminary budget, the contract states 62.5% of estimated per pupil increase, which is a decrease of 6.16%, equals a negative 3.85% for salary for the salary schedule, with 1% increase at the top step still. MESPA is 65% of the 6.16% negative increase, which equals a negative 4% salary scale adjustment. This budget includes steps, new hires, it includes everyone stepping, new hires, retirements, resignations, and layoffs. Overall estimated decrease of salaries is $212,478. This budget includes fringe benefits, includes impacts of Public Act 152. The cap increased by medical consumers price index of 3.3%. The difference is paid by the employees. And the, oops, I'm sorry, hold on. I can't, we'll go on. Sorry, my screen's not showing right. The retirement of this budget, we have various plans throughout the district, and they all have different percentages that we have to pay on them. They suggest that you budget for an average retirement rate of 27.5, and that's your district's obligation. And then your UAAL, or your MIPS, or stabilization, at 12.41%, which is a total retirement rate of 39.91% overall. That is taken right from ORS and their suggestions on what we should budget for 2021 retirement costs. The overall estimated cost increase are only $84,800 due to the reduction of salaries in this preliminary budget. In the amended 1920 budget, salaries total $45,950,504. In the 2021 budget, the salaries amount to $45,738,026, and it's a reduction of $212,478. Benefits in the amended budget in 1920 are $31,797,087. In the 2021 preliminary budget, benefits are budgeted at $32,082,142, with an increase of $285,055. Services, supplies, capital, and other expenditures in the 1920 amended budget total $12,868,639. In the preliminary 2021 budget, they total $11,658,112, for a total reduction of $1,210,527. These are some estimates that we took when we were looking at our reductions and how to go about finding reductions. We increased our class size in elementary to 28 to lower staffing amounts. We did project a 0% enrollment for next year, and we're estimating a 7 FTE reduction in teacher staffing. Of that, teachers, they're all unassigned. 6 of them come from elementary and secondary, 1 pre-K teacher, 1 paraprofessional, 1 bus driver, 11 support staff, 1 administration, and 4 maintenance FTEs, for a total of 25 FTE reduction. Instruction is defined as direct classroom costs, and it does not include costs such as guidance counselors, media specialists, social workers, nurses, PT, and OT. Past budget amounts have been focused on non-instructional areas. In 08-09, $7.2 million more was spent on instructional costs versus support costs. For 2021 preliminary budget, the gap increased by 341% from 0809 to $21.1 million. This shows the chart and history and how that gap has increased over time. Showing next year we are not increasing that gap much just because of the budget cuts that we have to do. The 2021 budget reductions identified collaboratively through administration and have not been identified specifically yet would be 1 administration staff, 1 middle school support staff, 1 central office support staff, 1 elementary staff, $100 district classroom funds, 8 elementary support staff, increased class size, elimination of an optional program, 2 operational staff, 1920 building allocation donations, 1 secondary support staff, central office budget reductions, extra duty pay reduction, 2 operational staff reduction, 4 secondary support staff, South Lyon High School and South Lyon East High School carryover donation, Schedule C reductions, 2021 building budget reductions, summer expense reductions, special ed support staff reduction, special education staff reduction, district capital budget reduction, district operational budget reduction, 2 maintenance staff reduction, and a district technology budget reduction. Total reductions identified in this budget were $2,942,765, and the breakdown of those reductions were non-instructional reductions of $1,047,118, instructional support reductions of $985,647, and classroom instruction of $910,000. For the financial forecast, we took all of previous budget adjustments that we had at the time of building this budget. It includes revenues and expenditures changes since May 2020, and it includes revised state aid and enrollment projections. If we look at our original budget from last year for 2021, we had projected a 1% enrollment for 2021 and a 1.4% increase in state aid. And in 21-22, we were projecting a 2% enrollment increase and a 1.4% per pupil funding increase. And we revised these numbers for the preliminary budget. We are in 2021. This budget is projecting a 0% enrollment increase and a negative 6.16% state aid percentage increase or decrease, sorry. In 21-22, this budget shows a 1% increase from the 2021 reduction and a 1% increase from enrollment for 21-22 and a 1.4% in per pupil funding from the reduction from 2021. 2022-23 budget a 1% enrollment increase and a 1.4 per pupil percent increase from 21-22. With those assumptions, we're looking at over a $2.5 million loss in the general fund, expenditures over revenues in 2021. 21-22 is just under 2.5 million, and 22-23 is just under 2 million. This is a graph that shows the general fund balance from 2013-14 through 22-23 with these assumptions being added. And this is the same graph at a percentage level showing that in 2022-23, if we don't do something, our fund balance percentage will be below 2%. These financial forecasts project in 2021, 2,578,826 shortfall. That does not create an operational surplus. this would bring the fund balance down to $5,657,194. And it would not meet the 10% plus or minus one board policy that the board has. In 21-22, this budget projects a $2,322,688,000 shortfall. Does not create an annual operating surplus. This would bring the fund balance down to $3,334,528, and it would not meet the 10% plus or minus one board policy. In 22-23, this forecast projects a $1,787,245 shortfall. Does not create an operating surplus. This would bring the fund balance down to $1,547,283, and it would not meet the board policy of 10% plus or minus one. So what's next for Southland Community Schools? The Teamsters contract expires June of 2022. MESPA contract expires June of 2023. The administrator's contract expires June of 2020. And the SLEA contract expires August 2021. The Finance Committee will meet again June 1st, if not sooner, and again on June 1st. Our public hearing is scheduled to be on June 1st with our truth and taxation hearing. State target budget approval date is still unknown. We'll expect a board approval of a proposed budget for 2021 on the June 15th meeting. We'll finalize budget documents in June and July and amend a budget in the fall based on actual student enrollment and per pupil funding amounts. And that is the end of my presentation.
So Carrie, if I could just
Yes, please.
jump in right at the tail end of that.
Yes, thank you.
Because Stacy has done an excellent job of framing for you what the current issue is in the state of Michigan. And what she didn't mention is that we're likely to lose some money from the current 1920 budget. But I want you to keep in mind before you start jumping off the edge of the cliff that what Stacy has provided you are the guardrails for what the worst is going to happen. Right? The very worst that's going to happen is that they've judged the revenue loss accurately in this quarter. So they know how much money they're going to take away from us for 1920. And they've got a good handle on the economy reopening and tax revenue starting to flow back in, because they are projecting increases into the school aid fund for 21, 22, and 22, 23. So the trend's going to go back up. You just have to recognize that this is a really huge drop down and steeper than any drop any of us have ever dealt with in the past. But once you know what your guardrails are, you can go to work and try to figure out how to live within it. And the other good news is you've got fund equity, right? And you put fund equity in the bank for a crisis. You are in the midst of a crisis. So I'll let you guys talk among yourselves now. I'll get out of the way.
Thank you, George. Anybody have any comments, thoughts, words of wisdom, opinions?
I guess I'll speak a little bit. I mean, I'll be the first to admit that everything about this budget feels brutal, but none of it's of our own making. I mean, basically, it's what the state's telling us to prepare for. I've heard numbers out there that are even worse than what this is saying. I mean, there was reports of it being 20-25%. So based off of what's coming out of the revenue estimates, I think we're ballpark, and we're not. The problem is, and anyone that follows school finance knows that we have to pass a budget for July 1st, and the state's budget starts on October 1st. So unless they're ahead of the game, which they weren't last year, we have to start a fiscal year not knowing what our true numbers are, and it's true more so this year than any other year. I know there's a lot of talk about trying to get the federal government to provide us more assistance to locals and to the schools. It might happen, it might not. We're planning on it not happening. So anything positive that does happen is going to help us, and it's going to blunt a lot of the stuff you're seeing tonight. But you know, at this point, we don't know, and we have to plan for it. And it is brutal, and we understand it. It's people, and when I think we're running at about 86% of our budget is utilized in staff. There is no way to cut enough money without affecting people. It's just plain and simple. I wish there was a different way, but that's kind of what we're stuck with.
Mr. Clark?
Yeah, I'll echo the comments from Mr. Dashner. I do have some concern, and some of the legislators that I have reached out to and made some attempts to get some input, that in fact it may be where we have to go to $1,000 per student decrease instead of 500. That's the worst case scenario, I think. I don't believe it'll ever go beyond that, but we don't know at this point. And I think the scary part is we won't know until fall. So there may be more cuts to come, and this is not going to be pretty. The community is going to have to be understanding that we're doing everything we can to mitigate these losses, but it's going to be painful.
Thank you. Anyone else?
But my question is, as bad as this looks, I think we can hope for it not to be that bad. We can hope and pray for it not to be what it looks like. I guess it's a question. If we end up with a 2 or 3% fund balance with only $1.5 million in the bank, so to speak, how do we function by losing $1,000 per student? I don't, in my mind, see that as fiscally, is that possible? I don't know what anything would look like if we cut $1,000 out of our already pittance from the state. How, it's beyond me. How do we cut that much and still be able to teach kids? I don't know what we could cut that equals that amount of money. I don't foresee it. Do we have any kind of idea what that would look like? I mean, I think it's absolutely horrific. How can anybody expect us to do close to what we do with that kind of like that 25% number cut? It seems ludicrous to me.
Eric, I'm assuming that's a rhetorical question at this point, and you're not expecting an answer.
I do want an answer, but yes, I do realize that it's rhetorical. I'm not the number one finance guy, and we do so much with the little that we already get. I can't imagine doing close to what we do physically with any less than that. $1,000, let alone $500 less. It's out of, I have no words.
If I could just jump in,
Please do.
Mr. Kennedy, I know in the years past when we had some horrific financial situations in the district, it's been a decade or more, we actually had to do borrowing to meet payroll. It's not pretty, and that's the reason you have to have a little bit of a fund balance, and you can't dip below into where the realm is that Ms. Witt talked about this evening. You can't go that low because then your cash flow is not feasible. So you do have to cut programs or borrow, and those are the two options you have.
None of which sound pretty in any stretch of the imagination.
No, but we are looking at what we need to do at Southland to be prepared to borrow money if we have to, so that we're not caught in a tough situation without cash flow.
Got it. Thanks.
All right, anyone else?
The one other thing that I'd like to add, Carrie, the numbers that Mrs. Witt was showing with the 2021 and 2022, the next couple years out, those are also forecasted on, call it status quo. So whatever cuts we make going in next year, there's no additional cuts going into the following years. So even though those numbers go way low on the fund balance, if things were truly trending that way, and I don't think we would continue on that path. I think there'd have to be additional cuts that get made to do that, to keep us solvent. So I just want to point that out, but we can't, with all the unknowns we're dealing with, we can't get too crazy about projecting cuts in future years in order to see what the future years look like. It's just showing what the change that we're making for this next school year does for the next 2 or 3 years after that, if nothing else changes.
Okay.
So we would still have an opportunity to make changes, but I'm also hoping, and it kind of goes with what George said too, is this is a historic, call it a roller coaster. We're going over that first big hill, and hopefully there's a pretty big upside on the other side that'll blunt a lot of this. And maybe it's just a 1-year blip that we're dealing with. I doubt it. I think there's probably 2 years of it, but hopefully we get back quick.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Ms. Witt, and I'm assuming you had a lot of help with putting that together, so we appreciate it. And I'm sure you'll be busy for the next couple months. Okay, next up is legislation. Mr.
Well,
Wright?
I'm pleased to let you know there's been no legislation because all anybody's talking about is the budget.
All right. And I know there are no CETA comments. Board committee reports. Legislative, did you guys meet?
We did. I think it's been 2 weeks now, and it obviously the budget crisis was the primary focus, and some of the scary numbers coming out from the education committee members on both chambers of the legislature are enough to scare you to death. So let's hope we don't get to that. There was quite a bit of discussion amongst the members what some of the districts are actually doing in this COVID crisis to both save money and how to handle graduations and things like that. I found it interesting that both the Milford and the Lakeland high schools both have 2 pools. The board voted to close the recreation/leisure pool at both of those schools to save money. So that you're starting to see the austerity measures kicking in other districts. So I think we're going to have to do the same thing here. It was a sobering meeting from our legislative lobbyists that were both attended the meeting, and it was striking. I can't add anything more to that.
Okay. Thank you. Policy, we haven't met. I don't think we have another meeting for a while, but we just passed all of our new policies, so I think we're good there. Finance, I think we heard everything, you guys.
You know what we know right now.
Facilities planning, I think you guys met.
Nothing recent.
Okay.
No, we haven't had a meeting since our last board meeting.
Oh, okay. And curriculum and communications.
Most of what you saw from Ms. Kudwa tonight, we discussed at our last meeting. In addition, we've deferred some social studies textbook purchases for now. Looking at my notes, unless Jenny or Dan have anything to add, I think that was all that we had on our agenda for the last meeting last week.
Yep, everything's been covered.
Okay. Other, Mr. Heitch, Dr. Heitch, do you have any other?
No, I think we've covered everything tonight. Thanks.
All right. Reports. I don't think Southland Educational Foundation has any updates. Do they, Mr. Bate?
They've been keeping up their meetings online like all of us, but they're like all of us are figuring out how to navigate the current situation. There's not a lot of we had in-person events and those kind of things that were supposed to happen, and trying to figure out how to retool for the social distancing culture that we seem to be mired in for some time going forward. So it's a lot of words to say no. There's not a lot of updates right now.
Okay, thank you. It is now time for our second public comment, and we do have one additional one. Mr. Matthew Smith, he's planning on calling in. So we'll give him a second to call in.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, thank you. You're up, Mr. Smith.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. My name is Matthew Smith. I am a band director at Centennial Middle School and Southland East High School, and a member of the Southland Education Association. First off, let me say I understand that a lot of what's going on right now is out of everybody's control. This is very difficult for everybody, teachers, students, our community, and what's happening. I'm hopeful that we will all rally together and come out of this stronger. One of my concerns, though, that I do have as I see this, and thank you for your report, Stacy, is that are we taking into account all stakeholders that some of these cuts are affecting? I see the Schedule C cuts and other potential cuts, and do we have committees properly set up, reflecting every portion where these cuts could potentially come from and letting those voices be heard? I remember speaking to several administrators in our district and emailing over the last couple of years about our Schedule C system, lack of job descriptions, and other things that we have, I think, not set up well with that system. And being a part of a change and making a difference with those Schedule Cs, my most recent communication was last November, I think the 11th of 2019, and some issues that arose. And I just hope that as we set up for a significant change, a significant financial change, from Schedule Cs to staffing to our operations in our district, that we are setting up our committees in the best way possible to let voices be heard and to understand concerns over cuts. I know it's not going to be easy, but at least taking all stakeholders, which our district commonly iterates over and over again, that we are taking our stakeholders into account, you know, when we send out emails for surveys and whatnot. I think this is another opportunity that I think we could do a better job of setting our committees up for these potential cuts and whatever happens for better success, so that our community is the best supported, our students are the best supported, our teaching staff, our ancillary staff, and every person that walks through our doors and uses our buildings. I just hope we're thinking about those groups and how we can let voices be heard during a very difficult time. I understand the need for a little bit of privacy, but I think the importance of transparency will also be valued and respected by our community if we just take that opportunity. So I know this isn't going to be easy, but I just hope we are thinking of every aspect and coming full circle and coming out of this stronger and healthy also. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I do not have any additional public comments at this time. Give them a second. No, nobody else. Okay. So next up is item 16, correspondence. I don't currently have any. Our future meeting dates are listed. We have a regular meeting on June 1st and another regular meeting on June 15th. Item 18, board comments. Anyone want to go first?
I'll step up. I think that the board accomplished a major goal this evening, which was find a superintendent to replace Ms. Baker. We've successfully navigated this difficult course, and the board, I think, has proven that we can work together. There's, you know, it's good that there's some diversity in thought. We've had that this evening, but we came together to pick somebody who can hopefully take us to the next level and get Southland through this financial crisis. Thank you.
Mr. Kennedy.
Sure, I'll go next. I concur with what Mr. Clark said. I think as a group, we did a heck of a job. I appreciate all of the hard work and extra hours that we've all put in. George, you got a little bit of time left with us. Thank you so much so far for your guidance. Stacy, thanks for probably right now having the worst job in the district coming up with that budget. We're in this boat together. Thanks to Chester and Jeff, our tech people, for making sure that we get all of these Zoom meet or these Google Meets on our calendars and we get logged in so that we can do all of this. Here's to the future. Thanks all. Be well. That's all I have.
Thank you. Ms. Ortel.
Yes, I think the last weeks and months have been challenging in positive and negative ways. Congratulations to Mr. Archibald. I look forward to the future of South Lyon Community Schools with you and hope that your expectations are met through us and vice versa. And then again to Dr. Heitch, again, another calming voice for the district through all of this. And I appreciate the fact that you came out of retirement to just sort of skate through for 6 months and then have like total disaster. And yeah, the budget is devastating. I think not to try to dip into pockets, which I don't think it will, but I think this just shows how a bond this August could be very beneficial. A lot of the bond is maintenance projects. If we don't have the bond pass, a lot of these maintenance projects are things that have to be done soon, which means it comes out of general fund, and we want as much general fund going into the classrooms, teachers, support staff, busing, etc. So please think about that going into the spring and summer. Passing the bond would be hugely beneficial to the bottom line. And with that, again, kudos to the whole board with this whole process of virtual superintendent hiring. I think we are what do they call it? A case study for potential future. Thank you.
Mr. Schwegler.
It certainly isn't easy to hire anybody, let alone the leader of a district where you have so many restrictions that we have put in place, especially when it's like you're hiring with a hand behind your back, because we're not really allowed to talk to each other other than in these public forums, which really limits our ability as we go through this process to really kind of get everyone's perspectives as we go along. So I just want to commend everybody for doing all the research that they've done. It's very clear, in my opinion, that we all have our own independent thoughts, yet we're all very respectful of other people's opinions. And through that, while we weren't unanimous in our choices originally, we can be unanimous in our support as a board as we move forward with our district. So I'm very happy with the overall outcome. I think we'll be well positioned to move through this tough challenge that we have coming ahead. And I'm excited to be a part to help with that. So thanks again, everybody, for your diligence and hard work.
Mr. Dashner.
I also want to echo the thanks to my fellow board members. It's obvious that everyone put in a lot of time, a lot of thought, and a lot of effort into this process. I mean, I can tell you I was a little bit nervous tonight talking about who I was supporting as a candidate, not because I didn't have confidence in them, but because it's the biggest thing we do as a board. And it's going to have a lasting impact on this district for years to come. So I want to thank everyone for the effort they put in. And like Dan said, is we might not all have the same opinion on things, but the fact that we work together and don't turn our meetings into spectacles over it. I am very impressed by everyone by able to work together the way we do. Congratulations to Mr. Archibald, and I wish Dr. Outlaw well. I'm sure he's got big things ahead of him. Just unfortunately, it's going to be somewhere else. And lastly, I will say to George, I've appreciated having you around these few months. The experience you brought to us has been helpful with some of the things we've been dealing with. Your outlook on things has been calming and reassuring. Glad we got to work with you for this short amount of time. And we're not done with you yet. We still got a couple more meetings, but glad we got the chance to work with you. Thank you, everyone.
And Mr. Abate?
Thanks. I want to say to Mr. Witt, thank you so far for the work you put in on the budget. I appreciate that effort very much. I'm not going to dwell on it though, because man, that is rough. And it feels like a little bit of a night to celebrate a little bit. So I'm going to say some thanks all the way around. I want to speak to our stakeholder groups, to our teachers, to our administrators, to the parents out there, the hundreds of comments that came in. I feel like we all worked really hard to listen and to hear you. I hope that you feel that we represented your feelings in our choice. I believe that we have. I want to speak to all the candidates who applied for this job. It was a high caliber pool of people because it's a desirable job, and that's a good thing. It speaks well for our district, and it's a huge ordeal, a huge undertaking for people to put themselves through that process. To Dr. Outlaw, I think I can confidently speak for everybody here that we developed a great deal of respect for you over the course of this process. You're clearly a really good person and an exceptional professional, and I'm sure that whether you're in Brandon or wherever else that you may land, you'll do very well, and I appreciate your efforts. I want to congratulate Mr. Archibald. I've known Mr. Archibald a long time. He's a great person. I'm excited for all of you to get to know what a good guy he is and the talent that he's going to bring. And Mr. Archibald, it's go time. Got a lot of work, so I hope that you are ready. I think that you are. I want to thank all of my colleagues on the board. You guys the effort, the thought that you put in, the rationale that you laid out tonight. You just clearly put the work in for the community, and I'm just so proud to be part of the group right now, and so relieved to be through all of it. I want to give a nod to Mr. Clark for the effort that he put in to connect us with MLI, and to Dr. Heitch, because those are two really key pieces that brought us through all of this. And Dr. Heitch, you're phenomenal. If you had some years that you wanted to put in, I would have been happy to just keep you on, but thank you so much for what you did. I want to thank Ms. Ganshaw as well. You're doing a really nice job guiding us, and especially this is not what you signed up for either. Like, you thought we were going to be in person. It was going to be pretty easy, and then the world turned upside down. So anyway, thanks to everybody. Have a great night. Everybody relax, and we'll get back to work when we see you again.
Thank you. I could just say what up everything Mr. Abate said, because you did say it, so everyone said it very well. It's been a very interesting couple months. But I think as a board, as a community, we're going to make it through, and we're going to work together. And thank you to Mr. Silveri for guiding us through that process. And he handled everything that we threw at him. We continue to do virtual visits and community forums, and he handled all of it with, of course, the help of Chester and Jeff on the technology side. And thank you to Mr. Heitch for being that calming presence that we've definitely needed over these weeks. Thank you to the board. I do know that everyone put in a lot of time and energy and effort into this, and everyone did what they really believed was best for Southland Community Schools. And I think Mr. Archibald will do a fabulous job, and I am very excited to get him going. And I'm sure I forgot something, but it's been a long night. So with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Dashner, supported by Ms. Ertel. Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
Okay, I vote yes, Mr. Dashner.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy.
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler.
Yes.
Ms. Anshaw.
Yes.
And Ms. Ertel.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. We are adjourned. Good night,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.